Susanna shook her head. No, then at the very least, William values money more than he values you. Susanna leaned back, her smile returning. You're not entirely foolish, but you're not very bright either. Don't get upset. Just hear me out. I've done my research. You studied under Andrew, a master in electrochemical energy, and your papers are insightful. You must have spent years in the lab to write them. Susanna met Katrina's startled gaze head-on. So, why didn't you continue your studies? Katrina's composure cracked for a moment before she laughed bitterly. What's the point? No amount of research can save Katrina's brother. Susanna waved a hand dismissively with all due respect. Katrina's brother deserves his fate. Anger burned in Katrina's eyes. Easy for you to say, Katrina retorted. If you'd been born into my family, with unreliable parents and a troublemaking brother, what could you have done differently? Once her defense broke, the words spilled out. I only have William left. You have everything. Why do you still fight me for him? Susanna shook her head, smiling gently. William was never yours. He never planned to marry you. Did William? Was Katrina trying to make Susanna give up? Not at all, Susanna replied. I'm just saying that you have other options. I'm interested in your research. If you're willing to continue, I can support you. Susanna told Katrina Routledge that they didn't have to stand on opposing sides. After all, even if one of them retreated from the battlefield, it wouldn't guarantee victory. A woman's triumph shouldn't be measured by winning a man's love. Even if I don't marry William Rossington, do you think he'll marry you? Susanna's voice remained steady, yet pointed as she addressed Katrina. Susanna noted that Katrina's next fiancé might not be as accommodating as Susanna was in tolerating provocations without retaliation. Katrina stood stunned into silence for a long moment. Susanna did not pressure Katrina. Instead, she simply left her with an offer. If Katrina thought it through, she could come find Susanna at Connery Enterprises. Susanna assured Katrina that she could support her research and help her break free from her parasitic parents. It was a deal that Katrina couldn't lose, wasn't it? On the drive back, the system piped up with a question for Susanna. The system inquired why Susanna was so intent on making Katrina work for her. The system noted that Katrina was talented, but surely there were even better options available. Susanna explained that Katrina was the supporting character. If Susanna's sole goal was to claim the 60 billion, there were countless quicker paths to success. However, within her limits, Susanna wanted to help those she deemed worthy, even as a tragic antagonist in the story. Katrina was vain and opportunistic, and she later resorted to sabotaging the heroine for her own gain. But Susanna believed that Katrina wasn't beyond saving. Katrina simply didn't know how to carve out a better path for herself. People are often remarkably forgiving of wayward men, endlessly hoping for their redemption. Yet when it comes to women who falter, the world's compassion runs dry. Who decided that a woman can never make mistakes in her life? Susanna offered Katrina a choice beyond the narrow confines of her current world. Whether Katrina took it was up to her. Susanna acted with a clear conscience, and that was enough. Later that night, Katrina messaged Susanna, I'd like to try, though. I can't guarantee I'll make you money. But even if Katrina Routledge became Susanna Connery's boss, Susanna was not giving up on William Rossington. That was fine. Healing from a love-addled brain was not an overnight process. The system asked, is this just to keep Katrina too busy to fight Susanna over the male lead? The system's commentary on human life was as dry as ever. Yet Susanna grinned. See, this is why AI can't replace humans, she thought. What's William's affection score? Now, it stood at 83. Based on an analysis of human emotions, this was a level typically seen in deeply loving couples, which only proved that love was unreliable. At the auction, Susanna bid against William twice, before gracefully bowing out afterward. William looked visibly moved. Susanna, I'll always remember your kindness, William said earnestly. Katrina nearly laughed at the absurdity of it. In the original story, Susanna Connery had cared for William with unwavering devotion, which William took for granted. Now, when Katrina baited him with a well-laid trap, he was overwhelmed with gratitude at the lab for Katrina's new project. Katrina visited her. Katrina was clad in a lab coat and blue gloves, her long hair tied into a low ponytail. This was the first time Katrina had seen her without makeup. Katrina's expression remained focused as she worked. When Katrina noticed Susanna, Katrina paused, checking on their progress. No, just checking on you then, Susanna responded. Look all you want, Katrina replied. Suddenly, Katrina's phone buzzed with a notification from William Rossington. Katrina glanced at it briefly before setting it aside without replying. The system informed Susanna that Katrina had barely seen William recently. It made sense. Anyone pulling 10-hour experiments wouldn't have time for frivolous distractions. If they did, it only meant they weren't busy enough. While Katrina worked for Susanna, Susanna began untangling Katrina's toxic family dynamics together. They staged a scene to convince Katrina's parents that she had offended a wealthy associate with supposed ties to the underworld. In their panic, they cut ties with Katrina on the spot, extorting some money as a guarantee for her troublemaking brother. Before leaving afterwards, Katrina and Susanna sat for hours at a cafe below the company building. Katrina remarked quietly, I never thought it would be so simple to get rid of them. Susanna leaned back, channeling the air of a villainous ally. The task seemed simple for Susanna Connery, although it might have posed a challenge for Katrina Routledge. For Susanna, or even William Rossington, it was just a matter of making a request. Leaning in slightly, Susanna's voice dropped. So, tell me, why didn't William ever help you? William had countless options to assist Katrina in escaping her difficult family situation. Yet he had chosen the simplest path, merely throwing money at the issue. The system, growing increasingly curious, questioned Susanna about her reasoning. Because to William, money holds little value, Susanna explained. As long as Katrina remains ensnared by her family, she will always depend on him. The system replied after a pause, agreeing that the male lead's behavior was highly unethical. Susanna laughed at the absurdity of the situation. For the first time, Katrina began to doubt William's feelings for her. Katrina asked to meet William, and, after much hesitation, posed the question, William, what are we really? However, William refused to give her a clear answer. They went on dates, held hands, and embraced like lovers, yet William would never openly acknowledge their relationship. When asked, William's response was always the same. We're friends, he would say. In the story, William treated Susanna Connery and Katrina Routledge similarly, fueling hopes and sowing heartbreak, all while enjoying their competition for his attention. And when Susanna eventually succumbed to her illness, William blamed Katrina for everything. Never once did William reflect on the countless opportunities he had given Katrina to antagonize Susanna. One evening, Katrina stood on the company rooftop, her breath heavy with the scent of wine. You were right, Katrina admitted. Katrina declared that William did not love her. "You've won," she admitted. Susanna laughed softly, incredulously. "Oh, what?" "William's love is worth less than nothing to me." In Susanna's mind, the system chimed in. William's affection score dropped to 79. "Why?" the system asked, puzzled. "Because of course William blames me for Katrina's departure. In his mind, he sacrificed her for my sake. That thought moves him deeply." Susanna reassured the system. "No worries. He will come crawling back soon enough." Meanwhile, Katrina poured her heartbreak into her work, spending sleepless nights in the lab not long after. Susanna arranged for Katrina to pursue advanced studies abroad, without William's knowledge. Meanwhile, William basked in his success after acquiring the land. His focus remained entirely on Rossington Enterprises' future. Even after Katrina left, a string of new close friends filled the void she had left in his life. You see, there will always be another first love, but the root of the problem lies within William. As for Susanna, she paid no mind to his antics. Susanna had her sights set on building something greater. The more stable Connery Enterprises became, the better. William Rossington treated Susanna Connery well these days. Susanna didn't even have to lift a finger for William to safeguard her reputation in public. They were the epitome of an affectionate couple. So much so that online fans had dubbed them the power couple. Fans gushed over them, calling them a perfect match. To which Susanna could only reply that shipping everything one sees would only lead to disappointment. However, no matter how good William's behavior was, his affection score had maxed out at 88. Susanna had told herself that someone like William Rossington would never fully love anyone based solely on emotions. 3 years later, Katrina Routledge returned from her studies with groundbreaking results. Just as Rossington Enterprises, under William Rossington's leadership, teetered on the edge of bankruptcy. Ah, how tragic it was that the male lead in a tragic romance was about to lose everything. In the original story, Connery Enterprises had faced a similar crisis, but this time it was William Rossington who would pay the price. Susanna Connery's father approached her one evening. "So, what's your plan? Break off the engagement or break it off?" "Of course not." Susanna Connery was going to help William Rossington. Susanna had worked far too hard setting up this scenario to just walk away. Now when Susanna met William again, his exhaustion was evident in the lines on his face. "I'm willing to take over Rossington Enterprises' mess," Susanna told William calmly. William looked at Susanna as though she descended from heaven. "Susanna, how can I ever thank you?" William asked. "There's not much I can do," Susanna said modestly. But in that moment, Susanna's modesty felt like a miracle to William. Desperate and cornered, William eagerly signed the contracts Susanna presented. Susanna Connery even purchased shares of Rossington Enterprises at slightly above market price to stabilize the company's stock. People in their social circles whispered about how Susanna Connery had sacrificed for love and how lucky William Rossington was. Only Susanna knew just how much she stood to gain from that piece of land. William Rossington had developed it halfway before running out of funds. Susanna acquired it at a steep discount, just as in the original plot. The land hadn't transformed into the bustling city centre William had envisioned. Instead, it remained desolate, barren, and wholly unremarkable. But where William had failed, Susanna would thrive. Susanna thrived. Susanna scrapped William's plans and turned the land into a luxury resort. Isolated, serene, and boasting unparalleled service, the resort became a stunning success. To sweeten the deal, Susanna incorporated Katrina's cutting-edge energy technologies to establish a state-of-the-art renewable energy park nearby. Everyone was thrilled, including William. After Susanna cleaned up the Rossington mess, William's affection score finally reached 95. The system asked, "How do you plan to earn the last 5 points?" "By beating him at his own game," Susanna replied with a grin. Just as William had exerted control over Susanna Connery in the original plot, Susanna Connery would do the same to William Rossington. As the CEO of Connery Enterprises, Susanna told William, "I have to be accountable to my employees." Just as William had been to Susanna, since Susanna had invested money and owned shares, she demanded a seat on the Rossington Enterprises board. "William," Susanna said earnestly, "I think it's time to merge Rossington Enterprises with Connery Enterprises." William froze, clearly reluctant. "You know the current situation," Susanna pressed. "I can't keep supporting you indefinitely." The board would not allow it, leaving William with no other options. William chose survival over pride. 3 years passed. Officially, William managed Rossington Enterprises and its remaining operations, though by now the lines between Connery Enterprises and Rossington Enterprises had blurred. William and Katrina became co-workers, although William had long since recognized that Katrina worked for Susanna. In William's mind, this was a gesture of reassurance from Susanna. His affection for Susanna grew yet again. However, deep down, Susanna could sense William's unease. He must have realized that something was not right. Still, there was no turning back. William Rossington's entire world was tied to Susanna Connery's. He had to convince himself that Susanna truly loved him. That was just human nature. A self-preservation mechanism cloaked in self-delusion. Now Susanna was William's lifeline, his provider. If he ever needed a godmother, Susanna would happily oblige. Eventually, the tables turned completely. William's jealousy flared whenever someone new entered Susanna's life. After a few arguments, his affection for Susanna inexplicably grew stronger. William couldn't leave Susanna. You see, love alone doesn't bind someone, but mutual interest does. William Rossington might not love Susanna Connery, but he had no choice but to act as if he did. The system asked how Susanna planned to seal the deal. Simple, leave him no escape. The final blow came when both William Rossington and his father were taken in for investigation. They'd never know. It was Susanna who tipped off the authorities. The Rossington family's foundations were murky at best, and the world was eager to push them over the edge, watching the chaos unfold. The system fell silent for a long time. When did the system start planning this? It finally asked. From the very beginning, half a month later, William Rossington was sentenced to 13 years when Susanna Connery visited him. William's head was shaved clean, his once pristine image replaced by a broken man sitting across the glass divider. Susanna sighed softly. "William, there's nothing more I can do. Take care of yourself in there. I'll handle the company and make sure your mother is looked after." For the first time, William cried in front of Susanna. William Rossington expressed gratitude, saying, "Susanna, thank you. I'm so sorry for everything." Susanna shook her head, responding, "There's no need for apologies between us." A year later, William's affection score hit its peak. Of course, it did. Susanna was all he had left in his mind.